Okay, in our first installment we had a list of awesome punk bands that we looped through and then printed out. So I've changed our list just a little bit. I made it a little bit longer so you can see that there are now 6 items in the list, and I put some numbers at the end, which is a little weird. We'll get to that in a minute. But if I go ahead and run this, it should print out my list of movies, and you can see that that's exactly what it did. Now if you recall, methods can only return a single variable. And that can be a challenge for us sometimes because we need to return more than one thing. Now, here's what's cool. A method can actually return one thing, and that one thing can be an array. Let's go ahead and take a look at how that works. I'm going to move my movie list building array into a separate method, and I'm going to return it. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Let's walk through it. What happens in here is I have moved my entire array population routine into this thing called populate array. And if you look in the bottom half of the window, you can see that populate array looks exactly like it did before. I create an array that's in this case 6 items long. I fill it up with movie names and run times, and then I return the entire array. Then when I loop through it, I'm able to see my list, and you can see that down in the bottom window here. It works just fine when I run it. So this way I have a method. That method can only return one thing, but that one thing can be an array of, in this case, strings. Now, let's do something a little bit cooler. Let's add up the number of minutes that these movies are in total so we can see what our total watch time might be. So to do that, we're going to use something called string split. So instead of printing out just the movie list, let's go ahead and use string split to print out just the title without the part that comes after that vertical bar. So what I'm going to do here is, let me show you a sample real quick. So let's say I have string, my string is equal to part 1, part 2. And if I do a system.out.println, you know that it's going to print out this stuff just like I have it written here. What if I do system.out.println and I say my string dot split, and by the way, the vertical bar is a special character for Java, so that's why I have to put in my 2 slashes. So I'm going to split that string in half by the vertical bar, which creates an array. So there are 2 parts to this array. There's the part before the bar and the part afterwards. So let's see what the part before looks like. Let's go ahead and run this. And it's going to print it 6 times because I got my movie list. Okay, so you can see that it printed part 1, like I said, 6 times. So we split based on that vertical pipe. Now let's try the same thing with our movie list. So remember, this index is a string, which means that I can use split. I'm going to split based on that pipe. And I'm going to take the first portion of the string that's returned. We'll simplify this just a little bit. Okay, so what's going on here is, as we loop through our array of movies, I'm putting whatever the current movie I'm looking at into a string variable called current movie. And then you can see that when we run that, it prints out the list of movies just like we would expect. Now let's go ahead and take that next step. And that next step is going to be, let's take that string, let's split it by wherever that vertical pipe is at, and let's only print out the very first part of it. So what should happen is we just see the movie titles without the numbers. Awesome. Now, how to do that total runtime. Okay, so now what's happening is you can see I've created int total runtime. I set it to 0. And then, as I run through my list of movies, I grab the second part of that string that I've been splitting up. That second part was a number. And then you can see that I add it to total runtime, parsing the integer just like we learned how to do in FracCalc. If this isn't real clear to you, put this code in your own program and try it out a little bit. So then what happens is when we run this, in the first part we get the movie title, and in the second part at the end, we get the total number of minutes if we were to watch all of those movies back to back. And that's where in my last line you can see I'm printing out the total runtime. So what that does is if we look at our array here, we're splitting those strings in half. We look at that second half, we turn it into a number, and we add all of them together. Like I said, go ahead, try this out on your own and change it around a little bit so you get a feel for it.